So I always love doing these speaker panels because it gives, well, I'm gonna put you guys on like the hot seat for a little bit, which is fun, and I think it just creates a great roundtable discussion for everybody to hear different business owners' perspectives on a lot of the topics we've covered today, and a lot of the topics that we cover just together in our coaching calls, right? But you know, I'm mom, so you guys hear me all the time. It's cool to hear like the brothers and sisters share their perspective and say the same things. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so I've got a few questions for each of you, and then some questions are going to be a little more broad, and so whoever has an answer first, just chime in, okay? So the first thing I want to do is I want to set the tone for 2024. I want you to think about the vision that you have for next year, whether it's enhancing a program or just something specific. And I would love for any of you just to share something that maybe you haven't talked about on social media or said something about it yet.
That we're doing personally?
In your business.
Ladies, do you want to go first?
You got it.
Sam, go ahead.
So I think between 2022 and 2024 and beyond, for us, it's definitely been a season of team development. And I talked a little bit about this at my event, but the role of sort of our team not only working in unison, but having people kind of in the right places for their exact skill set, I think is super important. So while in 2024, I'm sure like we may have some certain goals or things that we're working on, a lot of it does connect back to the specialization program, but so much of it is really related to now that we've added the right people and sort of sequentially, and now it's helping them work together because these are all very like productive, highly skilled, high achieving individuals, but then helping them communicate, helping them work together. So a lot of it is the team leadership component and personal and professional development, which then not only for them, but then in order to lead that group, then obviously that requires a lot of me as well. So when I kind of think about moving into 2024, for me, the theme is kind of like getting that core group firing in all cylinders to really reach like some of their untapped potential, because they're already doing pretty good, right? So it's like, okay, what's that new level of performance or that new standard for that group of individuals?
What about someone over here? Would love to hear.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've been at this for 18, 20 years, and I think what I'm trying to do, although I love coaching and all my clients, I'd like to maybe lessen that load a bit and focus on some of the other things I have going on, like the mentorship program, Scooby U, build out my coaching and coaching roster more. And then, you know, I've got other goals with the hormone clinic and things like that. We're branching out into veterans and helping more police and things like that. We've got a lot of avenues for that. So I think that'll be a cool program and something that they need. So we're building that out. I mean, there's more things I can go into, but that's
You're like, I could list a million. No, that's perfect. Lauren, this next one actually for you. I'm not going to put you on the spot with your vision. Don't worry. Sorry.
Which one?
Which vision? Personal, professional. No, I want to ask you, because I mentioned this yesterday, but you obviously are such a research-heavy person, and I know a lot of you in this room get in this cycle where you're kind of trying to figure out how to balance the research and the implementation, right? Like, how much more should I learn before I can actually execute? And so where is that balance without getting that analysis paralysis before implementing in your coaching?
Absolutely, and this is something that I've struggled with personally because that's just kind of how I'm wired, right? It's like there's always more information. Someone always knows more. There's always another paper. There's always another conference or whatever it might be. But it really does come down to, okay, who really centering yourself on, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, like who are you trying to be as a business owner, right? And really using that as your anchor, because otherwise it's so easy for us to, I mean, even after a weekend like this, there's probably 15 ideas that you guys have for things that you want to do, right? Which is amazing, which is probably my favorite part of events, right? Is because you're learning things, but then you're also thinking about other new things. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't implement those, but it's also about centering yourself and going, oh, that was really interesting when, you know, Sam brought this up, or when Jason brought this up, right? Oh, maybe I could do that. Okay, well, is that actually like part of your core values? Is that who you want to be moving forward? So I think part of it is really figuring that part out first, which is not a quick process, right? It's not like, that's not a quick journal prompt. Like, who do I want to be and how do I want my business to operate, right? It is going to be a very lengthy process, so give yourself some time there. But that is always what you can go back and center yourself on. And then that can also help with that analysis paralysis, because you're like, hey, wait, is this bringing me back towards this? No. Okay, I can learn about this because it's interesting, but is this really helping who I'm trying to implement this with? So I would say that that's a good kind of mental exercise. And that just takes time to establish that. But it's very rewarding work that you can use literally forever once you have figured that out.
So now I want to pivot to Tamasha, kind of piggybacking off of that, but we were chatting earlier today about this balance between discipline and priority and excitement, right? Because you're going to hear all these ideas, or maybe even outside of this, you have so many ideas. All of you are always coming to me with different ideas, and I am the same way, you're the same way, we all have all these ideas. How do you manage what actually needs to happen now versus what you're just excited about? Where does that discipline come in?
Honestly, I think for me over the last 2 years, I've had to really rein in on that discipline. And what I do is I'm constantly going back like every week. I'm a little bit like of a perfectionist actually, so I struggle with sharing sometimes things that I have ideas around and stuff like that. But once I get the idea and I'm clear, I'm ready to go. Like I'm ready to make it happen right then. But I've learned that sometimes there's going to be a gap between what I want to do and what's priority for the business. And at some point, with how large your business grows and you have people reporting to you, team, and even clients that are like depending on you, you have got to learn how to take your ego out of it, because that's where it really is. It's like when I was telling you all about retreats yesterday, when I first wanted to do retreats, that was like at the end of 2019, 2020. I didn't have my first one until 2021. Not because I couldn't have sold it. I would have sold it. I'm good at sales. I would have sold anything. But it was because it didn't align with the priorities of the business. I wanted to have a certain amount of money available, like in case it just flopped, right? And I didn't want to risk like not being able to meet payroll. I didn't want to have any issues around, client delivery, because we have more of an inclusive pricing model. So sometimes I have ideas. I even have one right now that I can't act on. And I'm like, let's go. But it does not match with the priorities of the business. And I learned how to do that just thinking about people other than myself. So there are going to be times where like you really just don't matter.
That's so key. Most of the time you don't. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, putting all the needs in front of your own for sure, because that excitement hits every day. And I swear the more you do and just the more you create and deliver, I feel like it's harder, Like there's so many ideas I have all the time. I mean, just being here again for the second year, I'm like, oh, next year. Oh, and Quantel and I are like, I don't know, maybe let's not do that next year, But anyway, this next question is for Sam. And I know that you two will have something to say about it, so please chime in. Tamasha, I don't think that you will, but if you do, you can say something. Okay.
She's my support on this side of the stage.
Yeah, I just want you to...
She's got my back.
Anything, yeah, right. Help Sam out. So there's obviously been
fight?
this...
Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we're gonna fight. Choose your person. No, I'm just kidding. So, guys, this is so serious right now. This functional coaching, right? The functional coaching space. This was not a term that was around, I don't know, even 4 years ago. And being in a space where you're working with a lot of eager coaches that are ready to dive into these cases and dive into the case studies, right? Because I've worked with a lot of your clients too. How do you help them navigate the imposter syndrome to just start implementing, and also that shiny object syndrome?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So less to do with just the functional aspect and more navigating imposter syndrome and everything. I do think there's a mix, right? So we can learn through watching others, through experiencing ourselves, and exposure therapy is very important too. So I think the reason why a community of coaches can be so powerful is if you each see, whether it's a client case or a scenario that you're all going through, or maybe one of you is going through, that can serve as a playbook for someone else. And just being open-minded to treating all of those cases as learning opportunities, whether it's a client case or someone just has a question about something they read in a book or watched in a video. I think imposter syndrome, first of all, a little bit of kind of reining in your ego in that sense and questioning, like, if you can get better at a thing, I don't think that's all bad. I do think we need to manage it so that it doesn't inhibit us from serving our clients or showing up for our audience. You do have to overcome that to a degree. But having a little bit in the back of your mind of like, hey, can I get better at this? How can I work at this? How can I approach this differently? And wanting to iterate, almost like what we talked about in the flagship program presentation, I think a small dose of that can be a good thing. So you do need to manage that. But I think my biggest answer to this would be a mix of exposure therapy through community and like-minded individuals, having some type of mentorship or apprenticeship or way that you can kind of work through things live, the ability to ask questions, and immersing yourself in the material. I think a lot of people, whether it's the term functional health or otherwise, think about your client the first time they went in the gym and they had to do like a squat or a deadlift or a push-up. It's not like they were perfect the first time. They had to do reps. So I think some of it is the environment, some of it's the exposure, and then some of it is you do have to do some reps. Now, if you're not a seasoned professional yet, I think having a spotter for doing the reps, so to use the analogy, if you've never really bench pressed and it's like your third time, it would be smart to have a spotter for that set. Same thing with a functional health case. If you're a little bit newer, having a spotter like a mentor or a coach or someone training you can help you execute it in a safer fashion, just like training in the gym. So that's a third component. I would just say kind of environment and community, exposure, and then like controlled situational application. It's like training wheels that then helps you kind of take off to do it on your own.
Thank you. And go ahead. I was going to say, you mentioned something yesterday about like you can niche almost too far sometimes, right? And so I wanted you to kind of talk on that too.
Yeah, so I'll get back to
Yeah.
that. But the one thing, whether it's, again, functional or name anything, the kind of shiny new object syndrome affects both coaches and clients, right? And ultimately what I think that sometimes these labels create is that we are now getting more disconnected, especially the clients. They're more disconnected from themselves. So they are now putting a label on, oh, I'm not going to get better because of this. We see this all the time in the mental health space. Oh, I'm like this because of my anxiety. I'm like this because I have OCD. And then you start to use that almost as this like crippling thing that holds you back. It's like your label, right? Which, yes, you might have anxiety, you might have OCD. I'm not downplaying any of these things. Like somebody might actually have, gut issues or hormonal issues that they need to work through, right? But oftentimes what happens, I think, is that especially because of the way that social media has infiltrated every single aspect of our lives, the shiny new object syndrome is 24/7, like 365, right? Like it's constant. So coaches are feeling the need to like always have this new thing because it's like, oh, well, everybody's going to get so fucking bored if I don't do this. And then the clients are like, well, I want to basically take myself away from me potentially having some ownership over the issue because it's actually easier to have less ownership because then you can say, it's not really my problem, it's this thing, right? So I think that it affects
That's
everybody.
huge. And saying that is really important because so the reason the labels can be problematic, and even when you even asked the question, I almost went down a tangent of like why I don't use the word functional as much anymore. But
You can go down that tangent if you want to.
So when we have that label, right? So Lauren said something very important, speaking to personal responsibility, and what's scary about that is it means our lifestyle and our choices are responsible for a lot of the issues that we're experiencing, whether that, especially from a physiological perspective, if you're not going to sleep on time, if you're eating, Jason mentioned Franken foods, right? We play a role in that, and there's a personal responsibility in that. So what's incredibly empowering though, once you realize that you are responsible, is that gives you this ability to play a role in the solution because you're like, well, if I created this, I can also get myself out. So I've tried to move away from labels and certain catch-all terminology and realizing that really what we're trying to address is we're making specific training, nutrition, and lifestyle choices based on a cluster of symptoms that this person is experiencing, which may or may not have a conventional Western medicine diagnosis from another health professional. But our job is then helping them understand, okay, some of this may be hereditary factors, right? And maybe a Western practitioner did give you a label, but there's a lot that we can do, like what is actually within our realm of influence and control in our own lives. So I'm really glad that Lauren mentioned that part. And also with kind of the shiny object syndrome as well, as like then clients want that thing or they think that that's what's wrong when maybe they've never And there are people who truly do have issues for sure.
absolutely.
But there's also dozens of people who may reach out to you where once you dig in a little bit, you're like, okay, no, I think the basics are still like we don't throw out the basics just because we do advanced stuff, right? Like the basics are like what we build the advanced stuff off of is like the way that I kind of think of it. So it's they have to be harmoniously kind of woven together.
It's convincing everybody that that's actually not the like boring stuff, right? Because this is actually what's going to move you more forward, right? And I used that example yesterday when I was talking about having a client do like that journaling prompt, right? And then we're uncovering now all of these things for 40 plus years from her childhood, right? And that was literally because I asked her to journal on one prompt for like however long that she did, an hour or two, right? Like that work has to be done regardless, but is that as exciting, you know what I mean, as saying like, hey, we're gonna make all these changes? Like I didn't make any changes to any of her stuff this week, you know what I mean? Like that was enough of a change that like we were able to discover that. But I think that oftentimes it can just be, it's hard because sometimes even as coaches, we feel like, well, should we be doing more to like keep people in? Because we think like, again, we're creating these narratives, like other people must be doing more than me and making more changes. So like I must be doing something wrong. And then the client's not, right? And we start to like spiral ourselves. So we also have to reorient ourselves and say, okay, again, what is the main issue that we're working through? How do we improve our communication skills to talk with clients through these things? And then have them change their long-term perspective. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter whatever we do. If they're not changing that perspective on themselves and their agency of change, they're not going to make any progress. They're going to cyclically go through programs and coaches until really the end of time.
I also had thoughts too about like obviously all the practitioners, but when you talk about labels, it's like, oh, I have this, or I have anxiety, or I have PCOS, or whatever that might be. I'm also thinking too, it's like when you start to have this feeling of imposter syndrome, you are labeling yourself. So that also can delay you getting the help, because is it imposter syndrome or delayed action? Because you know that you needed someone like Jason to be able to help you, right? Like you need a coach, you needed someone to wait.
I'm Sam. That's okay.
I'm Sam.
I mean, to be fair, you said one name and you pointed at me, so like you got both of us. We're both included. We're both in your answer. We still feel loved.
You need someone like Sam to help you, right? So you might need a mentor or someone to guide you. So those are questions that I ask clients too. Are you really feeling imposter syndrome, or is this a sign that you need help? That you are going to need someone there along that journey to help you as well? Because we put labels on ourselves all the time, but it does not mean that you just have to sit in that.
So speaking of, we were just chatting about this also to the side while this is going on. Yeah, not to have a side chat, but this idea of doing more or being better at what you're doing, right? Because I think a lot of coaches in this room may feel that they're stuck, whether it's mentally, with a team member, with a place they've been for too many months in a row, whatever it is. And you guys know how I feel about volume. Okay, great. But there's a balance between doing more and being better at what you're doing, right? So can you chat about that balance and what that dynamic looks like?
Yeah, so oftentimes we feel like in order to get better results for clients or to move the business forward, like I just got to bring something extra in. And I'm for sure in your industry, there's always some extra subspecialty that you can add, right? Some extra certification. But what if you paused? I started asking myself a long time ago, what if I just got better? What about this topic do I not know, right? What were some of those, it could be just a small amount of 2 to 3 clients throughout the year where I felt like I came up against a brick wall in the situation. They may have still gotten the result, but maybe they got there slower than I expected. Maybe it was a little bit harder than I wanted it to be for them. Maybe the team member struggled for a little longer on something that seems to be simple. So oftentimes it's you getting better at that thing that you might be trying to run away from that could also separate you from the competition in the crowd. We always talk about niching down, but then sometimes we want to keep adding other things. You need to be the best at what you do. I believe that I'm the best strategist within my industry and niche. I believe that. And I'm constantly developing just the strategic side of me, right? The person who says, show me any business and I can figure out a solution for you. But I didn't get to this place without constantly digging into going to strategy conferences and focusing specifically on that. So that's another thing that you got to get into your head. You might not need another certification, you just need more focus.
You mentioned being the best and really getting so just engulfed and engrossed in everything. And I remember you were talking about launch strategy earlier, right? And that's something that I love talking about, launch strategy. I'm not talking about it right now. But I remember my first launch, I was what? I'm just chatting with you, Sam, about your launch strategy earlier today. I was like, I love launching, and you were bringing it up earlier, right? Talking about launching and going evergreen, whatever. And I remember the whole doing more versus being better. I didn't know anything about launching, and the coach I was working with at the time, there wasn't a ton of strategy involved. And so I just remember downloading all of these podcasts from random people, and I was like, okay, this is like the common theme. I mean, hours and hours and hours, which I know they say like, don't take free advice, but I wasn't getting what I needed from what I was paying for. So I was like, I'm gonna get all of the advice I can. But I wasn't just doing more, I was trying to learn more simultaneously, right? And so again, talking about Lauren, like, you know, find the balance between learning and implementing. But you have to become so obsessed with what you're doing, right? Like, oh, I am not getting more leads, for example. I need to figure out why I can't, not just, hey, Taeler, are these 3 sources okay? Like, what about the process is broken, right? And I think that sometimes we don't take personal responsibility for our faults or weak points. How have you guys navigated your shortcomings in your business when it feels really frustrating? Anyone?
I need a microphone, I think. Can I just talk normally?
Yeah, let him.
Do you need me on the microphone or for your?
I would say talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you have to know your strengths. I mean, I think you have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. I know I've taken a couple personality tests. I think we were involved in a panel where we did one. Do you remember? It was Jeff Black's friend.
Taking a bunch, so.
Yeah, so I know, you know, for me, it said that my strengths are more of an idea guy than an executor, and building networks of people and bringing people together. And that's about right. And so I know I don't always execute well, but I've had great ideas. So I have people around me that are executors. They might not be idea people, but they are executors. And they get fucking shit done because I suck at that. Like, I'm like, oh, this would be a great idea. This stuff would be... And then it's like, oh, I'll sit there and I'll do my coaching work, and then it just sits. So you need people to fill in the gaps where you suck. And you got to be honest with yourself, like, yeah, I suck at that. I'll never be the smartest guy in the room, so I surround myself with people that are smarter than me, too. I mean, it's just how you got to do it. So it doesn't help to be a one-man show. You need to rely on people and fill in where you are weak. And if you don't know, take some personality tests. I can't remember what the one was that I took.
Strength Finder.
Yeah, that one. But I forget what we did that time. Was that what it was?
Yeah, Strength Finders. It's been around for a minute. You guys have probably all heard of it. That one's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Also, the Big 5 personality test is really good, very validated. And I'm trying to think of the website, but just look up Big 5 personality test.
Yeah. So I think you just gotta you gotta know yourself intimately and be honest with yourself too, and where you're lacking. And so, if it's organization, then find organization. If you you need more business coaching, then you see Taeler. If you need more, functional coaching, you see Sam or me, So those are, just kind of my thoughts. While I have the microphone, because I didn't have one before. As far as imposter syndrome, as far as imposter syndrome, everyone has it. It's normal. But for me, it's education and reps. That's what I preach. Like, so people that come through my university, it's like, you just gotta fucking do it. Like, you learn it, you know it, but you've got to try it. You've got to get reps. I always tell people, listen, you are not going to hurt someone by teaching them to pull back and flushing them, or whatever you want to call your anti-inflammatory. You're not going to hurt them. They're going to be in a better position, even if you fuck it up a little bit. So, you're not going to hurt people now. If you're doling out medicines and doing this, sure, you could hurt someone, but a couple herbs here and there and doing this and that and teaching them to be better at sleeping and all this, you're not going to hurt people. So start doing it. You just got to start doing it. That's it. That's the bottom line. And then where you're weak at something, read it. When I travel, I'm on Google Scholar. I'm looking up how to use this peptide or how to use this herb, or how do I, what about this, situation? What are the types of PCOS? I'm literally reading when I have downtime of things that I know I'm not good at. So.
Can I just add something to that? Because I love that point, Jason, about just doing it. And sometimes we can get, obviously, understandably nervous or scared, and we don't want to mess things up. Whenever I'm trying something new, I'm just very honest with people. I'm super upfront with them. Hey, I've never done this before. Here's XYZ reason why I think it might be useful for you based on these reasons. Here's why I think we should implement it. Are you open to trying this for the next 2 weeks? Right? Then you're being upfront with your limitations, potentially. You're giving them the rationale as to why you would want to try something. And then you're also letting them give you the no if they don't want to do it, right? Instead of, again, having that expert hat on and being like, here's what we have to do. Because some clients may not feel like they can speak up to that, right? So if you just present it in that way where it's like, hey, here's why I'm thinking this. Are you open to try this? And again, after a few weeks, we can pull this back and keep doing what we're doing right now. And usually most people are like, hey, cool, like that sounds, because I'm never gonna say something that's like off the wall, but generally speaking, people really appreciate that. And then sometimes it's like, oh, this is exactly what they need. And other times it's like, let's pull the plug on this. Like this was good in theory, didn't work out, right? So I think part of it is just having that conversation too. If you are trying to try new things and implement new things, just give the reason and also let the client say that as well.
I'm going to shift from business, a little bit, and go into just some personal stuff, if you guys don't mind opening up. But if something traumatic happens in life on a personal level, or something just is really throwing off your headspace when it comes to showing up for your business, right? How do you still make sure that you're showing up for your clients and that totally doesn't impact your bottom line? The reason I bring this up is because I think that when we run a business, we think we can take a month off and we'll be okay. You guys are both, I'm ready. Who wants to answer? I'm ready.
This is good.
Mentally, I'm in the float tank.
You want me to go now?
Well, Lauren or one of the ladies.
Okay, so I was already thinking about. Were you already going? No. Okay, great. So last year I had something traumatic happen. About a month before coming here, my husband was T-boned in a car accident, and it wasn't until about 3 months ago that we are at a place where we can say 90% recovered. There are some things that he's still dealing with, and so he has not been working. Right? It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you lose income in a household, you feel it. Right? And so for me, I feel like the biggest challenge that I faced, because money challenges aren't a big deal to me. I feel like I can just go make some money. But emotionally, it was draining. I mean, to see like my macho husband complaining about pain and things like that for the past year has been tough. And so for me, emotionally, it has been really important. I saw that it was really important that last year we went through this exercise with my team, and I was really transparent about how I need to be served and supported during times of challenge for me. And I was really transparent with what does it look like when Tamasha may not look like something's wrong, but there are things wrong, because I don't show pain or personal things like that easily. And so I've had to be really clear with them. It's like, once I say something, I'm not going to beg for help. I'm not going to beg for this, but this is what I need, and this is how I can be best served, and this is what support looks like for me. And they have been rock solid. The friends that know me, they've been rock solid. So I would say really getting clear before things happen on how you can be best served and what that looks like by the people around you, whether it's your team or people at home.
Yeah, this could be like a whole hour-long discussion, you know what I mean? And it's so hard because all of us, like even if you guys do have teams, right? Like, the brunt of it is on you, right? Especially in terms of like the bigger picture thinking, which is usually what's hardest when you're being hit like emotionally or traumatically with something, right? Like we can usually get our stuff done, right? Like, okay, I'm a little tired, I'm a little out of it, I can get my client updates done. Bigger picture stuff, that's where it's a little bit more challenging. So part of this, like about 2 years ago, I was going through a lot of changes. And I also just had to recognize too and give myself a little grace to be like, hey, maybe this isn't the season where you're like absolutely crushing every single like box, and like that's okay. And for most of my life, that's the type of person that I was. And I had to also be okay with that. Like there's only so much bandwidth that each person has. So when we're going through a really, really challenging time, or someone that is, like it's also going to, it's okay, right? You kind of have to give yourself that like permission slip. And it's also about learning to set better boundaries and realizing like what is draining that isn't really necessary, and then not just setting that boundary for yourself, but actually upholding it for yourself. So if like, wow, I really like feel better and operate better when I do these things, or when I don't do these things, you don't need to like make this or put this on anybody else, but it's really something that you have to regulate for yourself. So that is again going to require a little bit of reflection, and then saying, okay, when these things come up, like I could say yes, but I know if I say yes too many times, this is bringing me down. So it's really about upholding those personal boundaries as well. And that's going to take a little bit of trial and error to figure out what's draining to me would not be draining to you, and vice versa, you know. So I would say that can certainly help the most during those times, because shit happens, and we're not always going to be in a season of crushing everything in our life, and it's it's okay.
I mean, I've been through a lot of different crap over the years of coaching, from a divorce to crazy lunatics online trying to ruin my business for no reason. I've been through it all. The main thing I do, I show up every day and I do my routine. I get to the fucking gym, I eat my food, and I'm going to stick to what I know gets shit done. Number two, all the people in my life. I rely on them. And so if you do that, I mean, I think that's the best way to do it. Now, that's how I do it. But I do think routine is really important, and I teach that a lot in my coaching. And so I stick to my routine. There was many days I was stressed. I didn't want to go to the gym. Once I got there, something clicked. I got it done. There was days I didn't want to get up at 6 a.m. to start work. But you just do it. So you stick to your routine, and I think you'll realize you get on the outside and you get past it, and then you're good to go. But that's not to say during the divorce, maybe I didn't give someone a great answer or, but you can only move forward and get better from that. I know for me, I'm very to the point, and I don't like a lot of verbiage. So when there was no loom, that was a shortcoming to me. I would give you the answer, but it wasn't, oh, well, then do this, and I hope you're doing that. It would just be like, no, yes, do that. And so that was a shortcoming. So I recognized it, and I brought in a loom, And so now I can talk people through it, and I don't have to type. So, different things help and to bring you through. But stick to your routine. Yeah, they should sponsor me. Stick to your routine, and I think that's the best way to get through these things. And then, of course, your loved ones. So,
I want to switch gears. Tomash, this one's for you. So I want to talk about whenever you're hiring somebody on your team, let's say a VA, an OBM, and what I see sometimes is we put so much trust in that other team member that it's almost like we're not leading the vision anymore. They are, right? And it kind of gets lost. How do you navigate that leadership with a team member?
Well, it really connects to yesterday when I was talking about self-leadership. So oftentimes I feel like we have not coined that before we bring other people into the fold. And what happens, so first of all, can I go on a tangent about this OBM thing?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Shout out to Quantel, no judgment. I love OBMs. Right. You're an actual OBM. But I would say that OBMs, VAs, things like that, we have to really be clear as to why you are hiring them and if it makes sense, right? We're not hiring OBMs to create Canva graphics or, you know what I mean? Things like that. It's oh, I want them to manage my social content, things like that. When I think about having operational support in my business, I think about someone actually helping me to manage how the business is flowing. Keyword, business, money, right? Clients, things like that. The creative stuff, I think you can find someone else to do very easily. And so I feel like that's a huge deal. But when we're bringing operational support into the business, I really want you all to start thinking about how can this person really support me and not only driving more money, but making sure that clients are served faster, better, more efficient, and even potentially open up capacity, right? We're not looking for, when I think about an OBM, right, someone that's managing business, that person's coming in and they should be able to manage the business based on what my vision was and where I say the business is going and what I say it's supposed to be. And there will be times where I think management within your business should challenge you, but ultimately it's your vision. And if you're not clear on that, when you bring people in, they will run it into a muck and they will create whatever they're planning to do or what's beneficial to them. Right? So you have to have a really clear vision when people come in. And if you're not clear on that, they'll just take it and run with it.
And I think it's clear to at least say that a vision is not just revenue goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
That's not. Well, I just, think people have a hard time articulating their vision.
Yeah.
When they get going.
Revenue is yeah. So revenue is a byproduct of vision to me, right? And the more revenue that you can make, the more clear I think that you are on where you're going and what that looks like. But you have to break that down. Like, I want to make 500,000 and be like the best functional coach. But then how does that break down and what does that actually look like? So instead of just saying the what, right, and a lot of you kind of can think about the how, actually tell me what does that look like and break that down for people. I think Sam has.
Your stuff's been great today. I'm showing you.
You too.
Thank
What's
you.
Samasha say?
I'm just appreciating it. Well, because I didn't get to hear her yesterday, so I'm just over here. Just like, yeah, let's go. Do you want me to add?
You can, go ahead.
I didn't have it. I think she's just sharing the mic, but we can go to
Okay.
another question.
We'll keep moving. Samasha killed it, yes. Don't actually drop the mic, but, mic drop. No, I think it's an important question because that is the first hire, and it's not even just VAs or OBMs, right? Like, when you're under that $250,000 mark and you bring somebody in, we just kind of trust that, like, well, they're the expert. I'll let them do their thing. And then one thing leads to another, and we don't know what the hell our OBM did that day. We don't know how many hours they put in, but we're paying them more money or whatever, right? And it's typically a VA or an OBM. It's not usually a salesperson that's saying that. That's why I bring it up, because that usually is the first hire. So just managing your team. Sam's got something now.
I'll let you
All
go.
right, go ahead.
So this is super important because I think when you're hiring, like, first identify what constraint in the business are you hiring for, and then what are some key performance indicators that person is actually doing the business, not just random stuff and then not communicating it. And then as far as hiring based on your vision and core values, make sure it's like the right person in that particular role. So I love really everything that's been shared for this question, but I think sometimes, as much as most of the time it probably is that VA OBM, sometimes let's say your constraint is another aspect of fulfillment. There have been seasons where I've seen folks have to bring a different person in a different capacity, as long as that is specifically designed to, again, free up your time and ultimately allow you to do whatever it is you need to do or that you haven't been able to work on during that point.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say too is I know that the natural thing to do in business is, and what we hear a lot online, is hiring the VA or the OBM first. Typically, that's kind of like what you go towards. But make sure, I think you were almost alluding to that, is you determine what your hire needs to be. That's the number one downfall I see, even as I walk into some of these seven-figure businesses I'm working with. The way that they hire didn't make sense for what they have going on. So my first hire, but I have an ops background, right? I went based on my strength, was not an OBM or a VA. The first person I hired was an accountant because I made way too much money, way too fast. I didn't know what to do. Didn't have no tax money saved. Like, I was like, what do we do here? The money's flowing now. What do I do? That was my first hire. And she's still with me now, right? And so really think about that. What does your first hire need to be? What is the biggest, like, bottleneck or gap that you need to fill, and make sure that you are hiring based on gaps and struggles and not titles.
I want to bring something up, and this is for anyone who wants to answer as well, but you said this accountant is still with you today, and that's awesome, right? Team retention is awesome. How, as you grow your business, like, how do you ensure that people that need to be there stay there? Because I think it's really uncomfortable. Maybe nothing is wrong, right? Like, maybe nothing actually happened with the team member, but deep down you may know, like, maybe they're not the exact fit or the perfect one or whatever, or I don't think this role for this person is exactly what I need. How do you have that tough conversation or ensure that you are keeping track of performance as that person progresses, or just making sure that you're not being lazy as a business owner and you're just not afraid to get out there and find someone else to replace them?
Oh, this is good. So I hire people that I'm afraid of, right? And it sounds crazy, but break it down. I like to hire people who are not just experts at what they do, but they have a strong backbone. I can intimidate a lot of people, like, just by the nature of me and Taeler both like Virgos, we just straight up, right?
Virgo always, yeah.
And so I know what I want. I know how I want to do it. I got my thoughts. I got my ideas. I want to just run with it that way. And so I hire people that don't have a problem saying what they need, what's wrong. I mean, this is a lot. I'm thinking about the Chick-fil-A bag.
I know. I need that to, like, pause. Like, yeah.
I mean, just go ahead and empty it.
The Virgo is Virgoing. The Virgo is Virgoing.
Yeah. So anyway, those are the things that I think about, right? You said you had something?
I was just going to spot you if you got distracted by the Chick-fil-A.
It definitely took me down because immediately I'm
Anyone
thinking, is there mac and
listening to
cheese
this recording
in there?
is going to be like, what am I not seeing visually?
Well, there were sort of like two aspects of your question. One was people who were like underperforming and then essentially having the conversation to either remove them from the role or place them in a different aspect of the
Underperforming,
organization.
yep, and then
but there was a
being-
first portion of the question was different around hiring. Right.
Just being too complacent with who is on your team. Like, you know, okay, maybe that's not a problem per se, but like I know it's not a long-term solution, but I'm going to keep the band-aid there anyway.
You should create, like when you're first hiring like your first 2 or 3 people, by the time you get to like number 4 or 5, it should be so abundantly evident that it almost seems like it's like this virus and like your immune system attacks it because it's just like it does not fit in. And then it would ultimately, it's like you can try, if it's not that bad and it's, but this connects back to what we were talking about before, core values, vision, key performance indicators. Like you have some criteria to evaluate and then you can say, okay, if their core values fit, but they're not performing in the role, you move the seat. Like, okay, this is a good person, but they're not in the right seat for their skill set. And then you move them over. If they still do not work in that area, then they have to go. One thing I think people don't realize though, is if they are someone that's a good person and they've truly tried, but they are not performing, you can use your network to set them up with something that they might be more successful with than like what they're doing currently in their role in your organization. So it doesn't need to be, oh, I kicked you to the curb, I don't care about you. It could be, hey, it looks like this is going to be the best next step for you because this is what I'm seeing over here. And having some sort of criteria for evaluation, I still think you can look out for the human while also preserving and like being cognizant of the health of your business and how that person may or may not fit in. So I think that's a key aspect with someone who does not fit there. But I do think there's something to be said about like having the right people will make that easier because they'll be willing to either pick up the slack or they will identify it and come to you and be like, hey, this person's not like, they'll be on the same page as you, which will make it easier and reinforce your decision.
I mean, the longer you have the wrong people, again, even if there's not a problem, you'll just notice that things progress slower too, right? And there's going to be a time where you're like, I can't ignore this anymore because this has gotten pushed off because I was being lazy.
Yeah, and that impacts the performance of your good people, right? It's like, think about if you were a band, like your musician or your sports team, like they're or an orchestra, like everybody's working together for this collective outcome. Your business is very similar. And so if someone's completely offbeat or someone is not holding up, their end of the bargain, it leaves someone else out to dry. And so then your other team members will begin to get resentful if you don't address the problem. So it's like you have to take clear-cut action. You did mention, though, kind of, you alluded to it before going to the negative team members, it was like incentivizing, retaining, and like painting that vision for the quality people on your team. I think some things that are helpful that I've learned is they have to be able to understand how their wants, needs, goals, ideals fit within the greater picture of what you're trying to accomplish. And similar to how you might onboard a client, we're reverse engineering back, okay, how do we make that happen within the confines of the business? I think that's super important. And then just being like, you've got to learn your people. I kind of joke around. It's not like necessarily a love language per se, but if someone needs to hear that they're doing a good job, or someone needs to be financially incentivized, or someone needs time, or they value certain things, or it really is similar to almost like a romantic relationship in a way, but it's professional. So if someone really needs to hear feedback in some ways, okay, I'm going to focus on communication with this person. Other people need certain bonus criteria. Other people are not driven financially and they want personal development, leadership, mentorship. I have very different individuals and people on my team where some of them care more about the time I spend with them and I give them and how I pour into them more than their paycheck. That means more to them. I have other people where it's like, hey dude, I'm trying to accomplish X, Y, Z and I need to buy this. I'd like to make more money. How do I do that? And then there's other people where it's like, they feel like they get paid in telling them they did a good job or that they had I mean, granted, they need like still pay your people, but the degree to which they are incentivized by those things, you have to know kind of when to push and pull on those different levers that you have at your disposal. But the biggest thing is they have to understand, how their life as a human fits within the business life and how you can kind of give them that. Lauren and I have been to a couple live events together. Ed Milet talks about this as like you cast the vision and like their vision has to fit within your greater vision of the business. But another way to think about that is just their life wants, needs, things that they would like to do, and is there a way within the business that you can make their life just a little bit better, just a little bit easier, just a little bit more accommodating? Are there certain things they use or like or would have an interest in? Maybe it's sending a coach or a team member to a seminar because they love travel, and you're like, hey, cool, I did this for you. That to them might be as meaningful as a bonus, even if it wasn't as costly for you. So just be very strategic with your resources and how you deploy them, but be consider the person as you are deploying those resources.
If you've never asked a team member what their vision is, that's also a problem. Like you said, exactly, because it's not just about your vision. I mean, obviously they're working in your company, but their vision and your vision need to support each other, most definitely.
Yeah, and one simple thing that I teach people is ask often, answer honestly. So I ask my team members things often. Sometimes I really don't even want to hear what they have to say, but I'm asking for their feedback. I'm serious. Like sometimes I really don't want the feedback, but I know that they appreciate being able to give their opinion or like their thoughts. And so I ask often, answer honestly. And the answer honestly comes to sometimes they may give me an answer of something that they want, right? So it's like, I want a $50,000 raise. Well, honestly, it's not in the budget. Would love to do that, right? Or like I would like to maybe have a stipend for my internet because I work with you virtually every month. Is that something you can think about? You know what? I'll talk to the accountant about it at the next meeting and I'll come back to you. I can't answer that fully right now because I have to do that for everyone, but I'll come back. Oftentimes, you're looking to have an answer right away. Just answer honestly, and that also will help you.
Little things like we're on the same page today. I love it. We're just inside a room, and I'm not gonna go off super long because I want to hear what they have to say. But think about something as little as the Wi-Fi though. How she's looking for like a little opportunity. It's small. It's like same thing with when Lauren and Jason talked about routine when they have a traumatic life event. Literally his routine might just be finding little small windows of just small progress, small action, little things here and there. With retaining your team members, just them knowing that you even considered something for them and on their behalf can be very meaningful. Even if it's something as small as like, hey, can I have like $40 for my AT&T or whatever because I'm doing like just even looking into it and giving them an honest answer is very meaningful, even if it seems small. It just shows that you have their best interests in mind. Because then when the big stuff comes up, they'll trust you more because you went to bat for them on the little stuff.
100%. Or like a budget for electronics even. I mean, all of that's like super helpful and easy. I mean,
super cheap.
Yeah.
Like no raises.
Right. Jason, this one's for you. So there's a few coaches in here that are building teams of assistant coaches or maybe have had challenges with assistant coaches. Yours are pretty diehard you. So I want to chat, which is how you've created that community and culture.
Well, I mean, I think it first goes down to who I hire. Most people that I hire have either worked with me or they have gone through like Scooby-Doo. Or they came to me and said, you know, I like what you guys are doing. I would like to be a part of it. So I'm not usually out there just putting out an ad that says, hey, hiring coaches, you know. So for me, it's a little easier because I have my hands in a bunch of different things and I'm meeting a bunch of people. And so when it feels right and that we jive on the same things and what we like and what we feel like the business should be and what they want to help and who they want to help, and then, of course, I provide the support for them. You know, I help them get educated for free. I pay for them to go through, you know, different things about just, you know, building a business online, just different things like that. So I think that support for them, then they have that same support back to me. So I'm not just looking for, like, ads in anyone. You know what I mean? So it's got to be those people that kind of reach out, or I see something like sometimes it's going to be you if I see people that are just, hey, well, what other book can I read? Or, you know, I was reading this after you recommended this. And they're doing that extra mile. And I'm like, oh, shit, if you're, like, doing extra miles to educate yourself, that's the kind of thing that makes a great coach. So let's talk about this. Would you like to be on a team? And then if they say, yeah, then we explore it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. So I think that's why they have my back, because they're into the same mission.
So aside from, you know, being a part of kind of your ecosystem already, they've been looking at your stuff for a while, they've worked with you as a client. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of monitor their progress? Mm-hmm. Because I think some people will just hire an AC, maybe they're looking over their shoulder for a few weeks and they kind of just let them go. How do you ensure, because you've built a certain level of quality. So
Yes.
like, what's the quality control look like?
Honestly, for us, it's a WhatsApp messaging system, and we all just put in what we need, and I support them basically going over. So like a couple times there's been people like, oh, well, this isn't working right. I'm like, okay, well, let's see the GI map, let's review it, and then we'll have like a conversation separate. But there's like one thread that everyone can see what's going on, and we talk about solutions. And then if I need to have a direct conversation with them about the case, then I will. So oh no, I knew I was gonna do. Oh, I didn't
you're
spill
good.
it. Did you see that?
It's so good.
So that's kind of how we do it. So it's more organic than it is like, hey, we're gonna sit down twice a week. It's more organic, and then once they need it, then we do it. But they all go through Scooby U, and so that's a 4-month course on functional coaching. So.
Lauren, I want to ask you the same question. I know it's not what it used to be, but I mean, you always had a ton of, or at least a handful of really quality assistant coaches. And like I told you, joking yesterday, I've seen, Team Loco fit bags at so many shows. And so creating a community like that, right? Like, how do you do that? Because there are coaches in here that are like, I want to be that. I want somebody to see my name at a show, right?
Yeah, I think that starts a lot of the conversations. It's been interesting. Like, there's always like themes, right? And I think a lot of us have talked about, it's not necessarily like the situation. It's like what is being done previously, right? And that can come down to like business, that can come down to hiring, that can come down to like a pre-diet phase, like whatever it might be, right? So it's kind of like laying the foundation. And one thing about me, like I have many faults, but I'm generally like pretty myself, right? And I'm pretty honest and try to be authentic, as overused as that word is. But I think that people, like if you look at the people who are on my team, who are either work for me or been clients, like they kind of fit that too, in some way. Not necessarily like they all like dress the same or look the same, but like everybody kind of has like a little bit of like a quirky vibe, So I think part of that has just stemmed from like, this is who I am. Like I'm honest. I try to be like, listen and be receptive, create an environment where people feel like they can talk and be open. And that's really the best advice that I have there, which is not super groundbreaking, but that's really what I've done. And I always just try my best to just listen and be understanding, because everybody has a different perspective, different point of view, and that's really given me the best outcomes, even if the outcome isn't necessarily like they stay or whatever, right? Because sometimes it means a client's going to leave or a coach is going to leave. And I do have to say, I have had many great coaches who have worked for me, but some of them have decided to leave and go do their own thing. And part of me is sad because I would like them to still be a part of what we're doing. But then I'm also like, well, you know what? Like they felt comfortable and confident enough to like do that on their own. So like that makes me happy too. So, not everybody is meant to stay in the same place, and that's just kind of being like accepting of change, which is really, really hard. But over time, I've tried to learn that. But
One other thing I would add to just came to my mind. I think some people would prefer to have a clean slate. Maybe some head coach would rather have people that really haven't had much experience. I personally prefer someone who's put a little effort into building a business, has some clients, they've shown initiative. I don't usually bring in someone who hasn't built anything, because I know where my shortcomings are. I didn't have to build a business in this type of environment. I was a mess, And so I have someone on my team who's really good at that, and she works with my people. So I found her and was like, this is something you're going to do. So most of my people, number one, have showed interest in what we do. And number two, they've already taken initiative and at least have maybe 10, 15, 20 clients. So that's my model.
This one's for you, Tamasha. What would you say I'll hand you this mic, don't worry. I got you. I mean, you work with, obviously, coaches, with your clients, 6, 7 figures, right? So what would you say are the 3 biggest mistakes or pitfalls or shortcomings that you see with coaches that really struggle to scale to the multi-6 or 7 figure mark?
Top 3. The first one is financial management. Making money is easy. Managing it is where it gets tough. Because as you make more, it kind of starts to, if you're not careful, it'll just fly out, right? Like you'll just be spending money all over the place, especially if you run a model where you are constantly contracting out other business owners, right? And that's something that do not do a lot of, it can get really expensive. So learning how to manage money is typically a very tough one. Two, I would say communication skills for sure. We know how to talk to clients and things like that. That's real easy. That's normally what you start doing. But like having conversations not only with your team but like your peers, knowing how to collaboratively communicate and being able to speak to different people at different levels and in different rooms about different things, especially hard things. So those are the top two. And then the third one, I would say time management, more so on the side of like, give yourself an opportunity. Yes, you want to be like this incredible CEO, but like you also need to take care of yourself as a person, your wellness, right? It's because it's almost like you give the business the best of you and your lifestyle gets the rest of you, right? Your family gets the rest of you. Your children get the rest of you. Like you know what I'm saying? So finding that balance between like, yeah, I'm going to be this incredible CEO and I'm putting all this this time and energy into this, but also at the end of the day, once it's built, are you going to be like in crumbles? Are you going to have to be focused on getting your health back on track or, calming anxiety and things like that? So those are the top three things that I see.
I thought I was like your backup dancer.
I love this. Yeah, I'm ready. You always do good.
I do like that you shared financial management and the team communication. It's one thing to communicate really well with your clients, but then understanding team communication and miscommunication becomes really, really important. And the personal aspect, like I love that you hit on that as well. I'll try to go a slightly different direction just for the sake of maybe rounding out her list. I do really like her 3 though, but maybe I can help get it to 5. So the financial management is important, communication, the self-care, but I would almost tie that back to like to build on that for my number 4 if it was like a 3A, 3B, that self-care, but also self-leadership and personal development. It's like you get to this certain level because of your development, but then to achieve that next level, it will require even more of you. And also your personal professional development has to increase because you are now responsible for leading people on your team, not just your clients. So that will take a different level of you than what was thought previously. So I think that's super important. And emotional regulation. So that'll be a number 5. And I'm just saying. Well, I had a 3A, 3B, but okay. I think the personal and professional development building on, because that can be different than self-care. That can look very different, and that may include education. That might include exposing yourself to different opportunities, different mentorship, and then 5, emotional regulation. What I mean by that is you may have higher highs, lower lows. You may have periods of stability that seem boring where you're going to want to like blow it up and do something different or have shiny object syndrome. And you have to be able for each and everything that you're about to react to, then be able to kind of look out and see the consequence of taking that action, being deliberate and intentional. And it becomes challenging because there's wins, but also emotional regulation is important not only for your own state, but how it will bleed onto your team. Because if you are not emotionally regulated, then that energy will then transfer to everyone that's working around you. So whether that's chaotic, whether that's controlled, whether that's calm, composed, you will end up like how you are, like the business will likely follow. So you need to be really, really mindful and deliberate about that.
I know we're hoarding them. You guys had them for a while. I'm just kidding. All right, one last question. I want each of you to answer. I want you to put all of the manners aside. I want you to just be like spicy, okay? First thing that comes to your head, and don't tell me time management. Nothing vanilla-y. But what is like the one piece of unfiltered advice you can give to everyone in this room? If you're like, all right, if I can give you one piece of advice while you're scaling your business, this is it. You can have a moment.
I feel like we're gonna have like 17.
You ready? You go first.
I feel like
No.
No, it's like it's coming to me.
Yeah, it's tough.
Well, I mean, I can start. I probably have a top 10, but I'll give you, the top 1. I think, personally, and maybe it's because it is a strength of mine, I think to really scale, right? Like, build a network. Don't try to do this alone. And the thing was, when you look back, when I quit law, I don't know how many, maybe you guys don't know, but I was a lawyer for years. I was an in-house corporate counsel. And at night, I'd come home and I'd run my business, my Scooby Prep. And I was on my own. I was doing well. Numbers might make people uncomfortable, but, it's an intimate setting. I was doing about 300K. And, I was at a crossroads. It was either quit law and go all in or keep trying to toe the line. And I decided to quit being a lawyer, and I went all in. And at that point, I felt like I was isolated, and I needed perspectives from everyone, and I started to expand my network. I worked with a few business coaches, and they showed me things that I was doing that maybe I could do better or find other avenues of revenue. And so I took those advices, and had I not been open to listen to that and build that network, I don't think I would have climbed to 7 figures. So if you're someone who's a little bit more introverted, which is fine, but you can still try to build that network and meet people in the industry. And by going to these conferences, you can do that. I've seen Haley at a bunch of these things. I remember when you went to Gorman's thing, and I don't know how many clients you have. We were all sitting on the couch, and you even paid for the extra to sit and talk to all of us. All those things help to build. Yeah. So that helps, and so build your network. And, people like myself, because it's one of my strengths, I love to help other people get to where I'm at or help surpass me. If you do, awesome. But you need to build a network. You're never going to get to 7 figures, I don't think, on your own. And it might not be your goal. 300 maybe you would say, hey, it was a great life. I probably have more stress now than I did then. But I had these goals. These are, I wanted to supplement the company. I wanted all these different things. But build your network and make friends within the community.
All right, I got it. It's not that spicy, but. So one really important thing when building a business is to be very open, right? A lot of times, just openness in general is an amazing trait that we can cultivate. But really important to stay strong in your own morals and who you are as a person. And it's really, really easy to let that start to slip. It's never like a 180, right? It's always like a slow eroding of, well, I kind of had a gut feeling about this person or this situation or this, but let me ignore that. And then you eventually look up one day, maybe a few years later, and you don't even really recognize yourself or how you're operating or what you're doing. So if you really want to be truly successful, and not even just monetarily successful, because anybody can make money, but if you want to actually have that money and enjoy the person that you are, like with yourself, you need to hold up those moral grounds.
I'm making a note so I don't forget. But do you want me to go first?
I can go, or you can
Okay,
go.
I can go. I was about
Get
to
it.
forget what I was saying, so I'm going to write it down. So if it was on the spicy side, it was that no one's coming to save you. It's on you. And that's incredibly powerful, but also incredibly scary. And a lot of us, as we are scaling and growing a business, what you crave is certainty. It's why we do a lot of the things that we do as humans, but the sooner that you can realize that you create your own certainty, and the best way to build self-trust is through productive action, which is why everything that we talked about earlier is so important. And once you get to that place, you're not as worried about someone else coming to save you because you've got you. And so I wish that someone would have told me that earlier. And on that note, I would also say that's why it's so important in regards to the network comment, not just a network, but a network of people who will look out for your best interests, and they want what's best for you, truthfully. And that's not going to be a huge list of people. That's okay, but you need to find those people and stick with them and then give them the same thing in return. But most importantly, you've got to stick with you, and you have to have you first, because if you don't, then nothing else really matters.
So the spicy part of me says, stop dreaming so damn much. Dreaming is for sleep. Work during the day. Some of you all literally are dreaming all day, every day about what could be, but you have got to balance it out with the work. You got to. Like, dreaming is easy and it feels good and nothing's wrong and it's perfect. But you have got to allow yourself to find the space to consistently work towards your goals. The other side of me, though, says to act accordingly. Act according to where you are going and not where you are. You have to shift the narrative of like, oh, I've only made 6 figures. You know, like I got to figure out how to repeat that. No, I made 6 figures this year and I'm going for 500, right? That's the overall goal. The goal is to get to 7 figures, right? So you really have to start acting according to where you want to go now. Get yourself into the rooms with people that are where you want to be now. Don't wait until you are making the 7 figures to have 7-figure conversations, because those people are having 8-figure conversations. Mm-hmm. Act according to where you want to be and not where you are.
I'm spicy all the time, so I won't be too spicy. I'm going to try to say something that, well, first thing, perfectionism is another form of procrastination. That's the first thing. But the one thing that I don't talk about a ton, and if you've been around for a few years, you may know this, but you know, you are an extension of your business. Your business is not you, right? And one thing I want to say about that is specifically just how you portray yourself. I remember when I first started my business, I look back at my branding and I quite literally cringe because, yeah.
Me too.
Because I have always been me, but I'm like, girl, why are there pastels? What is this Britney font? Like, why are you wearing a sun hat? You don't even like the sun, right? So my point is, hello, you had the docs in your closet the whole damn time. But it's like, I was so afraid to be me because I know that I'm kind of a weirdo. And it's not that I didn't think somebody would like me. I just thought that Taeler and my business needed to be separate. And I swear, the money, the team, the vision, the second I was like, screw this, it was one day, I was like, this is not you. I looked at a photo shoot that I did and I was like, I hate this. I was like, I gotta scrap it. And so if you guys ever see like the throwbacks that I post, I mean, seriously, if you're afraid to be you, and don't tell me your life is boring and whatever else, because same, my bedtime is 9 p.m., but just show your clients and your audience who the hell you are, right? Just be you, because that attracts exactly who you want. You can have the spiciest content and all of the videos and the best material and the best courses. But at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't like you or know you, they're not giving you their money. So be you. Figure out who the hell that is and show up. That would be my advice. I can't because I'll have to pay for it, but, you know? Okay. Anyway, that's going to conclude this panel, but I want to say, can we give a round of applause to everybody up here? Seriously?